Welcome to my philosophy channel. This journey will take some patience, but if you stay until the very end, you may begin to see that much of what you call choice, happiness, identity, and even reality may be carefully manufactured signs inside a system that needs you to keep consuming. We spend our entire lives believing that buying more will eventually make us feel more real. Yet, modern happiness often feels like a hollow, scripted performance played out on a digital stage. We no longer simply consume physical objects to satisfy basic human needs. We desperately consume abstract symbols to prove that we actually exist. In this exhausting modern world, our deepest personal desires are often carefully manufactured by external forces, long before we ever actually feel them. Our digital lives have become so polished and curated that concrete physical reality frequently feels like a poor copy of a vibrant advertisement. Jean Baudrillard understood that our ultimate crisis is not material scarcity, but symbolic suffocation. Chapter 1: The Birth of Consumer Society and the Hidden Shift from Production to Consumption. A society defined by what it creates eventually transforms into a society defined entirely by what it systematically destroys through endless consumption. For centuries, Western civilization was anchored deeply in the ascetic principles of the Protestant work ethic. In that era, hard physical labor, frugality, and the careful accumulation of wealth were universally revered as the highest moral virtues. Human beings defined their fundamental worth through what they physically produced. Indulgence, luxury, and unnecessary waste were strictly condemned as deep moral failures and sins of the flesh. However, the catastrophic global economic collapse of 1929 violently shattered this ancient moral framework. The crisis revealed a terrifying new reality for capitalism. The fundamental threat was no longer a lack of production, but rather a devastating lack of consumer demand. Warehouses overflowed with goods, yet the masses lacked the capacity or the willingness to purchase them, leading to absurd tragedies where desperate farmers poured gallons of fresh milk into the dirt. To save the crashing economic system, thinkers like John Maynard Keynes advocated a radical reversal of traditional values. The state and the market rapidly realized that they had to stimulate massive demand, encouraging citizens to spend freely in order to keep the wheels of industry turning. Spending money ceased to be a frivolous indulgence and was swiftly elevated into a vital patriotic duty and a core civic responsibility. This marked the silent but monumental transition from a production-driven industrial society to a consumption-driven post-industrial society. The ethical paradigm flipped completely upside down. Personal restraint was suddenly viewed as an economic danger, while endless hedonistic consumption was championed as the ultimate engine of social progress. Credit systems and installment plans emerged, teaching human beings to consume rapidly first and pay through their exhausting labor later. This fundamental reversal shifted the very center of human identity. We were no longer glorified as noble workers producing necessary goods. We were now addressed strictly as consumers who must be treated like royalty. The market swarmed us with an unprecedented abundance of products, yet this dazzling material fulfilling secretly functioned to chain us more tightly to the endless cycle of working to repay our expanding consumer debt. We soon learned to despise a modest, frugal lifestyle as boring, conservative, or utterly unsuccessful. The advertising billboards that once glorified strong laborers were swiftly replaced by glamorous images of beautiful models enjoying pure, uninterrupted leisure. We were taught to believe that life is short and that ultimate satisfaction can only be discovered through the rapid acquisition of the next sparkling commodity. When a society realizes it can survive only by endlessly generating new artificial desires, human emptiness quietly becomes the most profitable engine of economic growth. Chapter 2: The Outsider, Looking In and the Anatomy of a Theoretical Assassin. To understand the matrix of modern consumerism, we must first understand the man who remained an outsider long enough to see its hidden code. Jean Baudrillard was not born into the glittering intellectual elite of Paris. He was born in 1929 in a modest provincial town to an ordinary working-class family. His parents were not highly educated intellectuals, and his early life was marked by rebellion and frequent frustration. He broke away from his family during high school and failed to enter university immediately after graduation. While philosophical giants like Jean-Paul Sartre and Michel Foucault enjoyed brilliant academic success from a very young age, Baudrillard experienced the bitter taste of mediocrity and failure. He did not pass his prestigious teaching examinations initially. Instead of basking in academic glory, he spent the early 1960s quietly teaching German in an ordinary high school. However, this academic alienation became his ultimate intellectual superpower. Because he was excluded from the comfort of the ivory tower, he remained firmly grounded in the mundane reality of the post-war economic boom. He watched carefully as ordinary working-class people began to surround themselves with shiny new cars, refrigerators, and televisions. He realized that these people were not buying objects out of strict survival necessity. They were desperately purchasing a prepackaged vision of a better identity. During the late 1960s, he studied under prominent Marxist thinkers like Henri Lefebvre and attended seminars by the great structuralist Roland Barthes. In 1968, he published his first major work, The System of Objects. Through his interdisciplinary studies, he concluded that traditional Marxism was dangerously outdated when applied to modern times. The system no longer merely exploited the worker in the factory. It now exploited the consumer in the shopping mall. Karl Marx had argued that harsh industrial labor alienated human beings from their true selves. Baudrillard argued something far more terrifying. Consumption itself had become the ultimate form of modern alienation. The human subject was no longer trapped by heavy iron machinery, but surrounded and suffocated by an endless network of beautiful consumer goods. We create these polished objects only to let them dictate our worth and organize our social existence. Even after gaining global fame as a fierce cultural critic and a theoretical assassin, Baudrillard refused to become a comfortable academic superstar. He maintained a marginal position as a professor for decades, eventually retiring to focus entirely on writing and photography. He deeply believed that the margins are precisely where a genuine intellectual truly belongs. To understand the illusion, you cannot sit comfortably on the main stage. A true visionary does not merely look at the glamorous surface of the era, but stares relentlessly into the hollow machinery that manufactures the glamour. Chapter 2: The Outsider Looking In and the Anatomy of a Theoretical Assassin. To understand the matrix of modern consumerism, we must first understand the man who remained an outsider long enough to see its hidden code. Jean Baudrillard was not born into the glittering intellectual elite of Paris. He was born in 1929 in a modest provincial town to an ordinary working-class family. His parents were not highly educated intellectuals. and his early life was marked by rebellion and frequent frustration. He broke away from his family during high school and failed to enter university immediately after graduation. While philosophical giants like Jean-Paul Sartre and Michel Foucault enjoyed brilliant academic success from a very young age, Baudrillard experienced the bitter taste of mediocrity and failure. He did not pass his prestigious teaching examinations initially. Instead of basking in academic glory, he spent the early 1960s quietly teaching German in an ordinary high school. However, this academic alienation became his ultimate intellectual superpower. Because he was excluded from the comfort of the ivory tower, he remained firmly grounded in the mundane reality of the post-war economic boom. He watched carefully as ordinary working-class people began to surround themselves with shiny new cars, refrigerators, and televisions. He realized that these people were not buying objects out of strict survival necessity. They were desperately purchasing a prepackaged vision of a better identity. During the late 1960s, he studied under prominent Marxist thinkers like Henri Lefebvre and attended seminars by the great structuralist Roland Barthes. In 1968, he published his first major work, The System of Objects. Through his interdisciplinary studies, he concluded that traditional Marxism was dangerously outdated when applied to modern times. The system no longer merely exploited the worker in the factory. It now exploited the consumer in the shopping mall. Karl Marx had argued that harsh industrial labor alienated human beings from their true selves. Baudrillard argued something far more terrifying. Consumption itself had become the ultimate form of modern alienation. The human subject was no longer trapped by heavy iron machinery, but surrounded and suffocated by an endless network of beautiful consumer goods. We create these polished objects only to let them dictate our worth and organize our social existence. Even after gaining global fame as a fierce cultural critic and a theoretical assassin, Baudrillard refused to become a comfortable academic superstar. He maintained a marginal position as a professor for decades, eventually retiring to focus entirely on writing and photography. He deeply believed that the margins are precisely where a genuine intellectual truly belongs. To understand the illusion, you cannot sit comfortably on the main stage. A true visionary does not merely look at the glamorous surface of the era, but stares relentlessly into the hollow machinery that manufactures the glamour. Chapter 4. The Manufacturing of Desire and the Illusion of Free Choice. True consumer desire does not evolve naturally within the human heart. It is meticulously engineered by a system that profits from our insecurity. We like to believe that our desires belong exclusively to us. We walk into a brightly lit shopping mall or scroll through a perfectly curated social media feed, and we suddenly feel a strong, spontaneous urge to buy a new product. We tell ourselves that this sudden want comes from deep within our own unique personality, representing a free and independent choice. But Jean Baudrillard argued that this feeling of spontaneous desire is the ultimate illusion. Our wants are not organic. They are carefully manufactured by a massive social machine. Advertising does not merely inform us that a product exists. It actively trains us to feel a painful lack without it. Commercials do not sell the physical object. They sell the abstract concepts of happiness, freedom, and success. In his analysis of the consumer society, Baudrillard explained that we do not consume objects in isolation. We consume a total system of signs, an interconnected social code. When you buy a high-end smartphone, the system immediately suggests that you also need the matching wireless headphones, and the designer protective case. These objects communicate with each other, forming a complete lifestyle package that demands total compliance. This consumer system relies on a continuous, highly pleasurable form of social education. We are not forced to buy things at gunpoint. We are gently seduced. Through movies, television, and influencer marketing, we are constantly shown the correct way to live and the correct way to display our success. We learn the grammar of consumerism just as naturally as we learn our mother tongue. The consumer machine operates by promising us absolute individuality, yet it delivers the exact opposite. We are encouraged to express our unique authentic selves by purchasing a limited edition shoe or a niche luxury fragrance. But millions of other anxious people are buying the exact same mass-produced uniqueness. We are endlessly running on a treadmill of artificial difference, chasing a finish line that constantly moves. We believe we are finally constructing our true selves, completely unaware that we are merely assembling a puzzle designed entirely by the market. Chapter 5. The Identity Machine and the Social Logic of Difference. We frantically assemble our identities using mass-produced objects, completely unaware that we are merely wearing the uniform of a highly structured system. In the modern era, we are constantly told that we must be completely unique. Advertising campaigns and social media influencers endlessly preach the gospel of authenticity. We are instructed to discover our true selves, express our inner essence, and stand out from the generic crowd. However, Jean Baudrillard observed a terrifying paradox at the heart of this cultural command. The consumer society does not actually want you to be a genuine individual. It only wants you to purchase the mass-produced symbols of individuality. When you carefully select a niche luxury fragrance, a vintage designer jacket, or a highly exclusive smartphone case, you intuitively feel that you are making a deeply personal statement. You believe these purchased brands accurately answer the profound existential question of who you really are. Yet, you are simply picking pre-approved options from a giant social menu. You are engaging in what Baudrillard called the social logic of difference. You are not revealing your soul. You are just distinguishing yourself from other consumers using a shared symbolic code. This relentless drive for personalization operates as a powerful form of invisible domestication. We become so obsessed with curating our tiny symbolic differences that we completely lose sight of the massive system controlling us all. We voluntarily step into the identity machine, willingly allowing corporate brands to dictate the exact parameters of our personality. We believe we are rebellious and free, simply because we chose to purchase the limited edition black shoes instead of the standard white ones. This symbolic system also generates a magnificent and deceptive illusion of social equality. The consumer machine promises a utopian democracy where everyone can participate through purchasing. It tells us that because an ordinary factory worker and a tech billionaire can both purchase the exact same cup of premium branded coffee or the exact same fast food burger, class divisions have miraculously disappeared. It manufactures the comforting myth that constant economic growth and material abundance will automatically erase all deep-rooted human inequalities. But Baudrillard brutally pierced this comforting democratic fantasy. While we are all given equal access to cheap consumer electronics and sugary beverages, the true markers of privilege have quietly shifted elsewhere. In a heavily polluted and exhausting post-industrial world, the ultimate luxury is no longer a mass-produced automobile, The true unattainable luxuries are now pure space, undisturbed silence, clean air, and unstructured free time. The system gives you a shiny new television, while quietly stealing your peace of mind and selling it back to the highest bidder. We are left profoundly exhausted by the endless labor required to maintain our artificial social differences. We work unforgiving hours just to afford the specific symbols that prevent us from slipping down the invisible social hierarchy. The objects in our homes slowly transform from helpful tools into cruel taskmasters, demanding that we continuously upgrade them to prove our continuing relevance to the world. Individuality has been cleverly repackaged, not as a rebellious act of the human soul, but as a mandatory daily purchase at the local shopping center. Chapter 6. The Democratic Mirage and the Comfortable Prison of Choice. We willingly surrender our true freedom in exchange for the comforting illusion of unlimited consumer choice. The modern consumer society relies upon a magnificent and seductive myth about human equality. It promises a democratic utopia where everyone can magically participate in the good life simply through purchasing power. It whispers the comforting lie that, because an ordinary office worker and a tech billionaire can buy the exact same cup of premium coffee, deep-class divisions have finally been erased. This creates a powerful psychological illusion that material abundance automatically translates into genuine social equality. We look at the overflowing shelves in the supermarket and believe that we have conquered scarcity. However, Jean Baudrillard ruthlessly dismantled this comforting democratic fantasy. He pointed out that while we might be equal in our basic biological needs, the realm of sign value is fundamentally built upon hierarchy and exclusion. When mass production makes a luxury item available to the general public, the elite instantly abandon it and create a brand new symbol of privilege. The goal of the system is not to make everyone truly equal, but to keep everyone running frantically on the same endless social treadmill. People are taught to believe that economic growth and abundance will eventually eliminate poverty and social friction. Yet, the reality is much darker. The continual growth of the consumer economy actually relies upon maintaining structural inequality. The wealth gap widens substantially, but the masses are pacified by cheap, mass-produced gadgets. We are comforted by the illusion of progress, forgetting that true luxuries like pure air, clean water, and undisturbed time have been stolen and sold back to us as expensive commodities. This brings us to the ultimate deception of consumer society, the concept of freedom itself. We step into a massive shopping mall or scroll through an endless digital marketplace, and we feel an intoxicating sense of absolute liberty. We can choose between 50 different brands of cereal, dozens of streaming platforms, and countless minor variations of clothing. We confuse this dizzying variety of products with actual human emancipation. Baudrillard recognized that this is merely a highly managed, pre-programmed menu of options. We are completely free to choose which specific symbol we wish to purchase, but we are absolutely not free to refuse. The game of symbols entirely, we have traded authentic liberty for what other thinkers have described as a comfortable, smooth, reasonable, and highly democratic form of unfreedom. Our tastes, desires, and preferences are relentlessly shaped and guided by mass media, influencer culture, and hidden algorithmic architectures. We genuinely believe we are exercising our deepest personal free will when we click the purchase button. In truth, we are simply fulfilling a behavioral prediction calculated by a corporate server, operating thousands of miles away. True freedom is not the superficial ability to choose from 1,000 pre-packaged symbols, but the profound courage to reject the artificial menu entirely. Chapter 7: Simulacra, Simulation, and the Desert of the Real. The boundary between the image and reality has collapsed, leaving us stranded in a world where the copy has assassinated the original. Have you ever scrolled through the digital photographs of your own vacation and felt a deep, unsettling sense of detachment? You see the smiling faces, the glowing sunsets, and the artfully arranged plates of food, but the actual memory feels incredibly thin. The image's flawless, but the lived experience within your human body feels strangely hollow, like a fading copy of a movie you do not remember starring in. To understand why our modern reality frequently feels fake, we must look at a parable Jean Baudrillard borrowed from the writer Jorge Luis Borges. Imagine an ancient empire obsessed with perfection, where cartographers decided to create the ultimate map. They wove a map so colossal and detailed that it covered the entire physical territory of the empire exactly. A perfect 1-to-1 scale representation that rested heavily upon the earth. In the original story, the empire eventually crumbled, and the giant map slowly rotted away into the desert sand. But Baudrillard looked at this tale and delivered a terrifying modern prophecy. He declared that, in our media-saturated age, the entire order has been violently inverted. The map no longer comes after the territory. The map now comes first. The simulation completely precedes and actively generates the reality we live inside. Today, the tattered fragments of the map are no longer rotting away in the desert. Instead, as Baudrillard chillingly warned, it is the real territory itself that is rotting away beneath the flawless map. The genuine physical world has dried up, leaving behind what he famously called the desert of the real. This phenomenon is the core of his most radical and disturbing philosophical theory, known as the procession of simulacra. To grasp this psychological vertigo, we must trace the 4 tragic stages of the image. In the first stage, an image is a good faith reflection of a profound physical reality, like an honest documentary photograph. In the second stage, the image becomes an evil counterfeit, intentionally distorting and denaturing reality to serve a hidden agenda. It acts like propaganda or heavily edited fashion magazines, warping the authentic truth. The third stage is where the ground begins to dissolve utterly beneath our trembling feet. Here, the image masks the complete absence of a profound reality. Think of nostalgic television shows, presenting a flawlessly harmonious family life in the 1950s. That perfect American dream never actually existed anywhere in physical history. It was a beautiful fabrication invented to make us terribly homesick for a past that never breathed. Finally, we crash into the fourth stage, the era we currently inhabit. Here, the image bears absolutely no relation to any reality whatsoever. It is its own pure simulacrum. The simulation is no longer a copy of a real thing because the original object never truly existed. The image does not mask the truth. The image itself becomes the truth, operating entirely inside a closed system of endless self-reference. In this final terrifying stage, we no longer even attempt to compare a digital image to a concrete reality. We simply compare one simulation to another simulation, endlessly swiping through models, measuring themselves against other models. We have entered the realm of the hyperreal, a synthetic dimension where the artificial becomes far more intense, vibrant, and demanding than anything the natural world could ever hope to produce organically. When the illusion becomes significantly more desirable than the boring truth, The concrete real world slowly evaporates into a ghostly silence. Chapter 8: Disneyland, Social Media, and the Hyper-Real Logic of Modern Existence. The ultimate function of a perfect fantasy is not to provide an escape, but to conceal the horrifying truth that reality itself has disappeared. To see this process in action, we must examine Jean Baudrillard's most famous and widely misunderstood example: Disneyland. On the surface, Disneyland appears to be a simple fantasy world, a meticulously crafted theme park filled with pirates, castles, and princesses. We believe we go there to briefly escape the cold, mundane reality of everyday life. But Baudrillard completely flipped this script upside down with a truly chilling insight. He argued that the real function of Disneyland is not to be the fantasy. Its true function is to serve as a massive decoy, designed specifically to hide the fact that the real world outside its gates is no longer real at all. By cordoning off this specific area and explicitly labeling it as fake or imaginary, the park implicitly creates a powerful binary illusion. If the park is the agreed-upon fantasy, then everything outside of it, the sprawling suburbs, the endless freeways, the supermarkets, and the shopping malls, must therefore be real. Baudrillard declared that this is the ultimate con. Disneyland is presented as imaginary in order to make us believe that the rest of society is authentic, whereas the entire surrounding country has actually belonged to the hyper-real order for decades. We see this exact same decoy strategy operating brilliantly within modern social media and reality television. We watch heavily scripted dating shows or flawlessly curated influencer feeds, and we categorize them as trashy, hyper-realized entertainment. We mock their obvious fakeness, believing that by recognizing the illusion, we are somehow immune to it. But this fake entertainment serves to make our own mundane lives feel authentic by comparison. Yet, at the very same time, the rituals and language of these manufactured shows deeply infect our actual reality. Ordinary people begin performing exclusively for their own social media feeds, creating artificial storylines and treating their personal relationships like a carefully produced season of a television show. The decoy has successfully hidden the fact that our real lives have simply become just another digital performance. Consider what happens when you visit a highly popular, highly photographed restaurant. The harsh neon lighting is not designed to make the food look appetizing to the human eye. It is calibrated perfectly for a smartphone camera. The exquisite dishes are architectural wonders, begging to be photographed rather than tasted. You spend the first 10 minutes curating the perfect angle, functioning as an art director rather than a hungry diner. When you finally eat the food, it is utterly forgettable. The genuine sensory experience of the meal was a complete afterthought. You did not actually consume a meal. You consumed the perfect simulation of a meal. Your digital camera roll holds irrefutable evidence of a memorable night, yet your actual sensory memory contains only a hollow void. You possess the flawless map, but the real territory was completely barren. We willingly starve our genuine senses just to feed a starving digital avatar that will never be full. Chapter 9: Financialized Signs, Blind Boxes, and the Collapse of Substance into Code. When the symbols we consume completely detach from physical reality, they transform into pure financial assets, trading on our desperate hopes for the future. We have already established that, in a postmodern consumer society, we do not purchase the actual physical object. We purchase the abstract sign. A pair of sneakers is not bought for playing basketball, but as a symbol of a trendy lifestyle. A cup of specialty coffee is not merely a beverage, but a coded marker of urban sophistication. However, in our current era, this logic has evolved into something even more extreme. Certain consumer signs are no longer purchased, even for their social meaning. Instead, they have been completely transformed into vehicles for financial speculation. Consider the explosive modern obsession with blind boxes, digital collectibles, and virtual in-game cosmetic items. People routinely spend thousands of dollars on a digital knife skin or a rare trading card. Many of the people trading these digital assets do not even play the underlying game. This represents a radical shift from past collectibles like rare stamps or ancient antiques. An antique possessed value because it was tied to a genuine historical event or an external physical reality. But the modern digital symbol possesses what Baudrillard called structural value, operating at the third level of simulacra. Its value is generated entirely through artificial differences and computer code existing strictly within a closed system. The scarcity of these digital goods is not real. It is a programmed, manipulable illusion manufactured by platform algorithms and corporate marketing strategies. Value is dictated solely by the internal consensus of a speculative community. These items do not need to prove their worth in the external world. They exist as pure floating codes in a digital void, detached from any physical usefulness. This financialization has infected even the most ordinary aspects of daily life. Consider a local bakery or a humble dumpling shop that barely sells any actual food. Instead of earning a profit through the high-quality baking of goods, the owner sells expensive training courses and franchise fees. The shop is no longer a place of food production. It is a financialized symbol of the entrepreneurial myth. People do not purchase the training course because they want to learn how to bake. They buy it as a leveraged expectation of future wealth. The same logic applies to the endless online influencers selling courses on cognitive upgrades or financial freedom. Followers do not consume actual knowledge. They consume the speculative possibility of the influencer's success rubbing off on them. The influencer transforms into a virtual asset. We have reached a stage where physical objects and genuine human skills have completely evaporated. Everyday life, personal hobbies, and cultural tastes have all been swallowed by the logic of financial expansion. We view our own social relationships and educational pursuits as asset portfolios to be managed and leveraged for future gains. The substance of human experience has been crushed into markable data. We no longer merely consume symbols to decorate our identities. We frantically trade them like casino chips, endlessly betting on a simulated future that the system never actually intends to deliver. Chapter 10: The Strategy of Lucidity and the Courage to Reclaim the Real. To survive a world where everything is a manufactured sign, we must first learn to recognize the invisible strings dictating our deepest desires. We have traveled together through the dark and disorienting corridors of modern consumer philosophy. We have seen how the useful objects of the past have formed into the hollow symbols of the present. We have witnessed the complete evaporation of physical reality into the endless, self-referential loops of the hyperreal. It is extremely easy to look at Jean Baudrillard's diagnosis and feel overwhelmed by absolute despair. Many critics accuse his writing of being excessively pessimistic, but a more accurate description would be that he was unforgivingly cold and lucid. He refused to offer us the cheap, artificial comforts that the consumer society sells every single day. He understood that recognizing the prison is the absolute prerequisite for any genuine form of human emancipation. If you do not know you are dreaming, you can never actually wake up. So, how do we live authentically inside a system that constantly models reality and programs our desires? The first crucial step is to fiercely separate what we truly want from what we have been carefully taught to want. We must develop the psychological habit of questioning the social origins of our cravings. When we feel the sudden, burning need to upgrade a device or buy a trending garment, we must pause and ask who is truly benefiting from this manufactured anxiety. We must actively shift our focus from a life based on symbolic possession to a life rooted in meaningful human relationships. The consumer system isolates us, demanding that we communicate with each other solely through the brand logos we wear and the status markers we display. To rebel against this, we must cultivate direct, unmediated connections. We must engage in shared practices and mutual reciprocity that entirely escape the market's coding mechanism. Baudrillard hinted at this through his concept of symbolic exchange. He envisioned forms of human interaction, like giving a pure gift, sharing a vulnerable moment, or experiencing a raw emotion, that cannot be reduced to a financial code or a social score. When you do something without any expectation of enhancing your personal brand or elevating your social status, you briefly short-circuit the identity machine. You step outside the simulation. We do not have to live in complete misery or deny ourselves every form of joy. We can still enjoy the beautiful objects of the world, but we must maintain a deep, ironclad psychological distance from them. We must refuse to let a mass-produced commodity serve as the ultimate guarantor of our existential worth. We must learn to laugh at the absurdity of the consumer spectacle rather than worshiping at its neon altar. True freedom in the hyper-real age is not about having infinite consumer choices. It is about cultivating the intellectual courage to reject the codes that tell us we are inadequate. It is about finding quiet, undocumented moments that have absolutely no value to the algorithm. It is about reclaiming the raw, unpolished territory of humans' experience before the flawless map completely smothers it. Thank you for joining me until the very end of this profound exploration into the mind of Jean Baudrillard and the architecture of the consumer society. If this journey has pierced the illusion and challenged your deepest assumptions about modern life, please subscribe to my philosophy channel and like this video. Continue this intellectual rebellion by sharing this content with those who are ready to finally see the matrix. Now, as you turn off this screen and look around the room, at the objects surrounding you, I leave you with one final, unsettling question. If so much of what you call desire was carefully taught to you before you ever felt it, what small part of your life is still truly and authentically yours?